Here are the Oppo Reno 12 and Oppo Reno 12 Pro, two new mid-rangers which are quite similar. So what's the difference between the two, and could one of them be your next mid-range phone? I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's find out in our Oppo Reno 12 and Reno 12 Pro review. The Reno 12 and 12 Pro are nearly identical devices, but there are a few subtle differences. The biggest difference between the two is that the Pro model brings a dedicated 2x zoom camera and a better selfie cam. Otherwise, these phones are pretty standard mid-rangers, with a focus on battery life and an eye-catching design. While the back of either phone is made of plastic, their finish is something unique. It's matte and metallic and silky smooth, with an S-shaped wavy pattern when it catches light. The overall build is slightly different though. Both phones have a plastic frame, but the Reno 12's is thinner, with the front and back panel curving into it. The Reno 12 Pro has a flatter and wider frame. Both phones have official ingress protection against water and dust, rated at IP65. The display of either phone is a 6.7-inch OLED with a 1080p resolution and a 120Hz refresh rate. Like I mentioned, the non-Pro screen is curved at the edges, but the type of glass they used is different too. The Pro model uses the superior Gorilla Glass Victus 2, and the non-Pro has new Gorilla Glass 7i, which is made with upper mid-rangers in mind. Besides that, the screens really are identical. On either phone, we measured the same good max brightness at around 650 nits with a manual slider, and around 1400 nits in auto mode when in bright sun. And both phones' displays have great contrast and plenty of sharpness. There's also support for 10-bit color and HDR10+ video. The refresh rate handling on these phones isn't ideal. You do get the 120Hz smoothing out your swiping on screen, but it won't dial down when you stop interacting with the phone. It would only go down in certain apps, like Chrome. For audio, you get a pair of stereo speakers on either phone. The loudness is very good, but the sound quality isn't great, with noticeable distortion and not much bass. There's an under-display fingerprint reader for biometrics, and it works well. We feel it would be easier to use if the placement was higher up though. The non-Pro model comes with 256 gigs of storage on board, but the Pro comes with 512 gigs. But on either phone, this storage is expandable beyond that through microSD card. The interface of these phones is Oppo's latest ColorOS 14.1 running on top of Android 14. Compared to what we've seen before, the .1 brings AI-based features. These include things like text summarization, voice transcription, and advanced noise cancellation during calls. There are also tools like the AI eraser, which can remove something unwanted from a photo. Besides AI, there's also a new feature called Beacon Link, which is essentially a Bluetooth-enabled walkie-talkie function with supporting phones. And both of these phones have an IR blaster, so you can use them to remotely control other devices with. If you'd like to learn more about what ColorOS is about, you can check out our dedicated video. And the Reno 12 and 12 Pro will get 2 years of major software updates and 3 years of security patches from Oppo. The chipset of these phones is the new MediaTek Dimensity 7300, built upon a 4nm process. Unfortunately, when pit against competitors in the same price range, the Reno 12 and Reno 12 Pro fall behind performance-wise. The Dimensity 7300 is not underpowered per se, but for this price you can get a phone running on flagship-grade silicon, even a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. At least this chipset doesn't seem to be so demanding, and when it comes to thermal management, the Oppo Reno 12s do a very good job. Powering either phone is a 5000 mAh battery, and the battery life is excellent. Both the Reno 12 and Reno 12 Pro were able to score some of the best active use scores around, at nearly 15 hours. Both phones support 80-watt Super VOOC charging, but they only ship with a charger in the box in the Indian market. At least Power Delivery 2.0 compliant chargers also work perfectly fine. We were able to charge either phone from 0 to 67% in half an hour, and a full charge took 46 minutes. Now we're onto the cameras, and like I mentioned earlier, they're a bit different between the two devices. The Oppo Reno 12 has a 50-megapixel main cam, an 8-megapixel ultrawide, and a 2-megapixel macro camera on the back. On the front is a 32-megapixel selfie cam with autofocus. The Pro model setup is similar, but with a bit more. It replaces the macro with a 50-megapixel 2x telephoto cam, and the selfie cam is 50 megapixels here, again with autofocus. We'll actually start off with these cameras because otherwise the camera performance is identical. The Reno 12 Pro's 2x zoom camera captures clean, sharp, and detailed images during the day. Colors are saturated and vibrant. In some scenes, the exposure is a bit lower than we're used to. At night, there's automatic night mode processing applied, and the results are surprisingly good. There's good detail, light sources are well contained, and colors are rich. As expected, the Pro model has the edge over the non-Pro when it comes to zooming. The digital zoom produces shots that are slightly less detailed and sharp, and have a bit more noise. The difference isn't striking though, and the non-Pro still does a decent job when zooming. You might expect the Reno 12 Pro to have superior 2x zoomed videos as well, but as it turns out, it'll switch to a crop from the main camera, just the same as the non-Pro model. Now selfies. The Reno 12 Pro does a really good job here. There's plenty of detail, good sharpness, and wide dynamic range, and the subject is always in focus, thanks to the autofocus. When comparing the selfies from the regular Reno 12, the Pro model is the clear winner. Its output is considerably sharper and more detailed. And here's a look at 4K selfie videos taken with either phone. Now let's go over the other cameras. During the day, the main camera produces nice and vibrant photos with saturated colors and high contrast. The sharpness is adequate, but the fine detail is lacking when you view from up close. And the dynamic range is just okay. Given the identical camera hardware, chipset, and software, it's no surprise that we couldn't find any difference between the two phones here. In fact, we'll skip the side-by-side comparisons from the next few samples. In low light, again, you get auto night mode processing kicking in. The photos look pretty good for the most part. Sharpness and detail are well preserved, without introducing any noise. Light sources are well contained, and colors are rich. 4K videos from the main cam have wide dynamic range, excellent sharpness, and plenty of detail. Colors are vivid, but still close to natural. The electronic stabilization is unimpressive though. It smooths things out a bit, but it's not nearly enough to compensate for walking, even at a normal pace. And here's a look at the main cam's 4K recording at night. The quality is pretty good. And now the ultra-wide cam. During the day, it produces photos with a decent amount of detail, with punchy colors. There is some artificial sharpening added. Like the zoom camera, the ultra-wide tends to go for lower exposure in some scenes. At night, the ultra-wide's photos are nothing to write home about. It prefers to use a lower exposure to conserve the highlights, but this means shadows come out quite dark. There is no fine detail, and sharpness is subpar. The ultra-wide cam is limited to 1080p when recording video. The sharpness and detail aren't great. So that's the Oppo Reno 12 and 12 Pro. They're decent mid-rangers with a catchy design, excellent battery life, and a good main camera. However, there are some shortcomings here and there. There are competitors which pack flagship-grade silicon at this price, and faster charging. When comparing the two phones themselves, the differences come down to the screen glass, storage options, and the zoom and selfie cameras. The price difference isn't huge, so if those upgrades are important to you, it could be worth it to spend just a bit more and get the Reno 12 Pro. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you on the next one.